So it seems whoever is working in the PR department at Polyphony Digital is really trying to secure that bag for both Gran Turismo 7 and future releases in the series. 2 new twin manufacturers and 2 new twin cars have been revealed as coming in future updates this autumn, which, if you wasn't too sure, it is any time from September 25th onwards. So you may be wondering, who exactly are these 2 new twin manufacturers that are arriving in Gran Turismo 7 and more than likely in future titles as well? Well, they are definitely firm fan favourites, mainly for people that are on the continent of Europe. Of course, I'm talking about Opel and Vauxhall. They are finally returning to the game. So you may be wondering, how exactly do we know this? Well, it doesn't come through a leak or anything like that. It comes through the official Stellantis website as well as Opel and Vauxhall. In the very late hours of yesterday into the early hours of this morning, Opel, Vauxhall both showed off a Vision Gran Turismo concept car. This right here is the Opel or Vauxhall Corsa GSE, and there's a fair few things to actually note about it. Number one is the return of the GSE badge. Of course, this was massively sought after in the 1980s. As for the car itself, it's a little bit like the Corvette Vision Gran Turismos that we saw last week. It's a look into the near future, and in fact when it comes to the Corsa, it's a very near future look. Of course, we will see a lot of these design elements incorporated onto the road-going Opel or Vauxhall Corsa from early 2027 onwards. Now, of course, this is a much more beefed up and race-ready version of the Corsa that we're seeing here. Now, again, this is purely just a concept car, but a lot of the design elements that we're seeing here will be incorporated from 2027 onwards. Now, in terms of the car itself and the stats, I'll talk about them more in a few moments' time. Now, of course, there is something that we do need to talk about, and that is the elephant in the room. Whilst, yes, this is a Vision Gran Turismo car, what we do see is a return of 2 manufacturers back to Gran Turismo, of course Opel and Vauxhall. Now, as for Opel and Vauxhall, they were in Gran Turismo from Gran Turismo 2 all the way up to Gran Turismo 6 and haven't returned since until now with Gran Turismo 7 in autumn of 2025. Now, I know that the general player will probably give a big sigh and say, look, it's just another Vision Gran Turismo car, it's another fake car, it's another concept car. But don't get it twisted. When it comes to Gran Turismo, they've always had a close relationship with concept cars. Even as far back as 2002, they released a game solely dedicated to concept cars. And the Vision Gran Turismo program since 2013 is basically just a continuation of it. Now, of course, the other big thing is that somebody working at Polyphony Digital must be very good with public relations with manufacturers. Of course, this is inside a week the second manufacturer we have seen a close relationship with. The first was on Friday with, of course, Corvette, and a look into the future of the Corvette with the Corvette CX and, of course, the CXR. And now, of course, less than a week later, we have the return of Opel and Vauxhall to Gran Turismo, and, of course, a look into the very near future from early 2027 onwards at what the next generation of Opel Corsa or Vauxhall Corsa may look like, of course here in a more beefed out, specced out version. So you may be wondering then, why is he mentioning public relations with manufacturers? Well, it's kind of obvious. Polyphony Digital having close relationships with manufacturers and getting them on board for these Vision Gran Turismo projects only boosts those relationships, giving us players a much higher chance of seeing more from those manufacturers in both Gran Turismo 7 and, of course, future titles. It's basically keeping them sweet, working closely with them and benefiting the series. Now, of course, most recently this would apply to Xiaomi, Corvette and, of course, now Opel and Vauxhall. And as for speaking about Opel and Vauxhall, this more than likely gives us a much higher chance to see some of those much loved favourite models from older Gran Turismo titles actually make their way into Gran Turismo in the future. Whether that's going to be Gran Turismo 7 7 or a future release in the Gran Turismo series, who really knows? But of course, when I'm talking about those much loved models, I'm speaking of cars such as the Calibra DTM, which would fit very nicely with the already existing Alpha 155 DTM, of course the Tigra Ice car and the Astra DTM. Of course, with getting Opel and Vauxhall back into the game, these types of models have a much higher chance of realistically returning now. So of course, even if I'm not a fan of that specific Vision Gran Turismo car, I only see these kind of things as a massive plus for the series, and of course gets more manufacturers back into Gran Turismo. So with that out of the way, then let's actually discuss the car itself, including what it's all about and of course the specs as well. Now in terms of the car, of course this is the Opel or Vauxhall Corsa GSE Vision Gran Turismo. You will see it in two different badge versions being promoted by Vauxhall and of course Opel. So again, don't be surprised if you see one with Vauxhall and then another with Opel. It is the exact same car. Basically they're twin manufacturers in a sense. Now in terms of the car itself, it is a closer look at some of the design incorporations that we may see from early 2027 on the road going next generation of Opel or Vauxhall Corsa. So again, whilst it is a massively specced out, beefed up version, there is some of the design elements on this car that will probably be moved over to the road car. That is the whole point of a concept car. Now in terms of the platform this car is using, it is using the STLA small platform. This will not just be used by Opel and of course Vauxhall, it will also be used by Peugeot for their next generation of, I believe, 208 or something around those lines. Now another big thing to mention is the return of the GSE badge. Now I believe it has shown up in recent years, I think since 2022, and we've seen it on one of the Grandland models I believe. But as for the GSE badge, it is pretty much a historic badge for Opel and Vauxhall. I believe it was used on the Monza. I think one of the Holden Commodores as well actually ran it way back in the day, and I think in terms of some other European versions that we've seen, I think some of the older Astras might have ran it. But as for the GSE badge, it is basically returning with this car, and of course is attached to this car since it is electric. Now let's talk about the stats and specs then. First of all, this thing is going to be 4-wheel drive. That's going to come in incredibly handy considering this thing is claimed to put out 800 brake horsepower. Now there is also claims out there that it could be upwards of 950, which is absolutely ridiculous with a model with the Corsa, I guess, branding on it. That is just insane. Now in terms of the car itself, it has a 0 to 60 time of 2 seconds flat and a top speed of 199 miles per hour. Now as for the weight, this is the interesting one. Electric vehicles are usually known as being incredibly overweight and absolutely awful to slow down. However, this thing is claimed to weigh only 1170 kilograms, which is absolutely nothing for an electric vehicle. So that makes it much more interesting. Now you may have noticed at the rear, we have the huge rear wing and the huge rear diffuser. Those are both active aero parts. Now in terms of the actual model itself, I believe it was the designer that I saw the interview with, but they're claiming that they want to have their Type R moment with this kind of Opel Corsa. So I wouldn't be shocked to see some of the design incorporations that we're seeing here not only put into the standard road going model, but also into a more beefed up real world model in the near future using that GSE branding. Now when it comes to the release date, we don't have anything set in stone. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, it states autumn of 2025. That could be any time from September 25th onwards. Now if you do want to see the car in the real world, it will be shown off at the Motability show, I believe, at the start of September. And if you're attending the Gran Turismo World Series finals in Berlin a little bit later on in September, then the car will actually be there in person for you to kind of check out and such. So if you are attending that, you actually have a chance to see this ridiculous monster up close and in person. Anyway, there we go. We now see the return of Opel and Vauxhall to the Gran Turismo series for the first time since Gran Turismo 6 in 2013. Who knows what this could mean for the future of those two manufacturers in game. Hopefully, as I mentioned, it does show a better public relation, of course a closer working relationship between Polyphony and of course Opel and Vauxhall, and hopefully we'll see the likes of the Calibra DTM, Astra DTM, and of course the ICE race car in the future of either Gran Turismo 7 or the next upcoming release, when whoever knows that will be. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Take care guys, peace.